Released on December 18th, 1987 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, Final Fantasy aimed to reinvent the success of Dragon Quest. Before Final Fantasy, Squaresoft was known for making games that, well, kinda sucked. I haven't actually played them, so I don't know for sure, maybe one day I will, but it did lead to a rumor in my inner circle in middle school. The rumor went that Square was so broke that this fantasy game was the final one that they would make. This, however, just isn't true. Director and father of the franchise Hironobu Sakaguchi admitted when making the Pixel remasters that he kind of stole the name from Fighting Fantasy. The English words and alliteration just sounded cool, which is fair enough. In order to make this game, Squaresoft needed a dream team. First on this list is the game's director, Hironobu Sakaguchi. Now, Sakaguchi had actually been asking Square to make a role-playing game for a really long time. He was inspired off of Dungeons & Dragons and Ultima. He, however, was denied at every single turn. It was until Dragon Quest was released and had extreme success. The success of Dragon Quest cannot be understated, and Square saw an opportunity to relive it and make it for themselves with a director who was truly passionate about the idea. Second on our list is Kenji Terada. He is the scenario writer for the game, and his main job was to fill out the world that Sakaguchi had established. And he's also the guy who shut down a rumor around my school. Yep, so there's another one. This rumor went that Final Fantasy I was just a Dungeons & Dragons game that Sakaguchi played with his friends back in high school that he was now making a game. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy I's plot is extremely bare bones and are extremely reliant on the crystals, something that Kenji Terada made. So, too bad to the D&D story. Next, we need some people who can actually make the world of Final Fantasy come alive. And first is someone who is working for Square for a while at this point, and that's Nobuo Uematsu. Now, I'm gonna be honest, his work on this game, it's not his best. Now, it is extremely good, and plenty of songs on this soundtrack are very, very great. But there's not that many songs in this game, and a lot of them are very short, repetitive loops, like the airship theme. But he would go on to make some of the best music in video game history in the later entries, which I will probably cover at some point. Last on our dream team is our artist. Now, Kenji Terada and Hironobu Sakaguchi actually got into a little fight over who the artist should be. You see, Kenji Terada had someone whose artwork he would really wanted, but Sakaguchi already had it in mind, and he would come into the office the next day with some of his works to prove it. He showed up the next day and just to find that they were both thinking of the exact same guy, and that man is Yoshitaka Amano. Amano is known for his work on Vampire Hunter D and Tekken Man, which is likely where they found him from, but he also was an animator for various things like Speed Racer. This guy's been around for a really long time. Now, Square, despite greenlighting the project, likely because of the lack of success in their previous endeavors, didn't have that much faith in the project and was only going to make 200,000 copies. Sakaguchi, however, had in his infinite foresight convinced them to make 400,000 copies. And this would pay off tremendously, because the game went on to sell 520,000 copies and would stay at pretty high ranking in the most popular video games of the 80s. Sakaguchi even recalled walking into a game store, since video game stores didn't really exist at the time, and seeing Amano's artwork on the box of his game, and immediately knew before any had been sold that the game was going to be a success. And I can't really blame him. But while it was a smash hit back in the 80s, does it hold up today? With literally hundreds and thousands of RPGs to play through nowadays with modern graphics and gameplay systems. Does a game that's this old really hold up? Well, that's what I aim to find out. Without further ado, let's get into Final Fantasy. Now, before I get crucified for not playing insert version here, there are reasons why I'm playing the PSP version. The main one is that I had originally planned to include the added content in this video. I even recorded it, but I decided to cut it since the video was getting really long and there wasn't a whole lot to add with the extra content. It's not that it's not fun or engaging, but it's just that it didn't really work with the flow of the video. I had also at one point planned to play the NES version to try to get a feel for what it might have been like to play this back in 1987, but I decided against it since there's a cavalcade of reasons why I won't be able to recreate what it'd be like, probably because I wasn't even alive during this game's release. This game on PSP also lets you save anywhere, which is pretty convenient for recording videos. The other versions are a little bit more difficult, but this game is pretty easy anyway, so don't worry about it too much. Anyway, tangent aside, that's it. The first thing the game wants you to do is select your class and name all your characters. I decided to keep everyone's class as the default and name them after some of my most iconic Dungeons & Dragons characters: Whirlwind, Tsunami, Earthquake, and Fire Blaster. After that, we're immediately given a text crawl explaining to us about how the natural elements of the world are dying, and that the people who live in this world believe in a prophecy that 4 heroes bearing crystals will come and stop the fiends and save the world from destruction. After that, we're immediately placed into the overworld right outside of Cornelia. Stepping into town and asking everyone around, you hear that everyone wants you to save the princess, and that over in a town to the east, Pravaka, it's become a bit of a pirate's den. There's also this old man here who thinks that this sage Lucan is searching for a place called the Crescent Moon. Showing this guard the crystals that we have, he lets us into the castle where we get to speak to the king. He explains to us that their finest swordsman, Garland, has taken the princess over to the Chaos Shrine to the north. He also tells us that he'll repair the bridge to let us travel across the water if we go save the princess. So that's our first quest. Travel the overworld for a while and you'll quickly reach the Chaos Shrine and meet Garland. Garland tries to spout some monologue about how Cornelia will be his and no one can stop him, but we all know that that's complete malarkey. We're gonna kick his teeth in. So now we get to really explain the battle system. You probably got a few encounters going up here, but I'm going to explain it now. Your characters, depending on their class, will be able to do a few different actions. Everyone will have the attack command, but only the knight, thief, and monk will be able to really do anything. You also will have the defend command. This will help reduce damage, but in this game, it's not really that useful. The only really thing the defend command is useful for is passing your turn, really. The Knight White Mage and its upgrade will have access to White Magic, the Knight having low level White Magic. They're kind of like a paladin from the later games. But again, they have to be upgraded for that. The White Mage is obviously able to cast healing magic and defensive spells, and the Black Mage, as you would expect, would be able to cast black magic, damaging spells. It's pretty simple stuff, there's not much to it. The Red Mage is kind of a jack of all trades. It has some medium level white and black magic, while also be able to use some medium type of sword, so not like Excalibur, but can hit decently hard if you buff it enough. Overall, the classes in this game are fairly balanced, but as you start to progress in the game and get better at it, they are a little bit unbalanced. I won't really get into that here. If you want to test it out, go for it yourself, but just know that some classes are definitely better than others. As you can see, Garland went down pretty easily. He's not very strong, and we saved the princess. After saving the princess and returning back to Cornelia, the king tells us a bit of information that we already know. That we have to use our crystals to save the world and return everything back to balance, and that he's going to repair the bridge so he can cross the ocean. Before we leave, however, the princess stops us to give us the loot. This is an item that will not be useful until much later in the game, like end of the game. So don't forget that you have it, but it triggers on its own, so it's not, you can kind of forget about it. But it is interesting that she has this. Traveling to the north towards the bridge, when we try to cross it, you get this really nice text crawl that just screams Dungeons & Dragons narration. If you've ever played D&D before, you know exactly what this is like, and it's awesome. While I never played this game as a kid, I did play a lot of Dungeons & Dragons, and I still do. So looking at this text crawl, it really does kind of get my gears turning, if you will. Final Fantasy in general does a really great job of making you feel emotions within yourself. It's kind of hard to explain, and the later entries, it kind of gets worse and worse as the games become more story-based. Whether that's for better or for worse is to be determined. I'll explain a bit more what I mean by this at the end when I'm talking about my conclusion, so you'll just have to wait for that. Traveling towards the east, we make it to Bravaka, the place that was overrun by pirates, and we quickly find who's in charge, and he sicks his minions on us. Don't be worried by there being 9 of them, these guys are easy, they go down very quickly. But it does bring up a bit of an interesting question. You see, after we beat the pirates, we're given their pirate ship to sail across the ocean, but how? You see, the power of the wind and the water have completely vanished. So how does the boat move? Are we just rowing really hard? It doesn't really make much sense. And this problem is actually one that's addressed in a later game, so I'll bring that up when we get there, but that won't be in this video. And these kind of plot holes actually appear more than once in Final Fantasy I, so I will bring them up when they're relevant. It doesn't take long of sailing across the coast for a little while and fighting a few sharks that we make it to our first location of interest, the elf town of Elfheim. Elfheim's problem is that their prince has been in a deep sleep because of Astos, a dark elf. So we're probably gonna have to go get that. Also, in this town is something very weird. It's kinda cool, I guess. If you talk to these gravestones, well, there he is. The hero of Hyrule. 6 feet under the ground. Well, there you go. Legend of Zelda is canonical to Final Fantasy. So, in order to actually reach Astos, you need to get the crown. In order to get the crown, you have to go into a cave to the southwest. In this cave, right before the crown, are these guys called Pisco Demons. And to say they beat my ass would be an understatement. I didn't stand a chance. These guys wiped the floor with me. But the thing is that Final Fantasy 1 is a little bit weird. You see, these sort of set encounters actually work like an encounter table, meaning that if you die and come back, there might be less of them. This phenomenon is one of the reasons why the PSP version is easier than the NES version. In the NES version, you can only save at inns, whereas here you can save right before the square. So if you know where they are, or you just use your intuition, you can just kind of save right before them and reset if you die, or if you don't like how the encounter turned out. In my case, I died when there was 4, and then 3 showed up, and it was fine. Now, I kinda got lost here for a second, because it's been a while since I last played, so I ended up making my way over to Matoya, who's blind because she doesn't have her crystal eye. So I did the only thing that makes sense, and I robbed her. Nothing like stealing from the disabled. So if you head north of the cave where you got the crown, you'll find a castle, the Dark Elf Castle. And this isn't actually a dungeon, you just kind of go into a room and there's Astos. If you have the crown, he'll fight you. And, well, he's easy. There's nothing really to say anything about it. He can cast death on you, which ended up happening to me. I thought about resetting so that way I could get everyone's EXP, but I decided against it. He's just really, really weak. So, there's nothing to really say about him. Defeating Astos will give you the Crystal Eye. If you give the Crystal Eye to Matoya, she'll give you a Jolt Tonic, which you can then give to the Elf Prince to wake him up. I'm not sure what the Jolt Tonic is supposed to be, like you're jolting someone awake, but considering Matoya is a freaky little witch lady living in a cave, I think this is just a bottle of electricity. It doesn't really matter what it is though, because the Elf Prince, as a reward, will give you the Mystic Key. Now, you can actually go back to the cave and back to the Dark Elf Castle to pick up a couple of goodies with this, but the main reason you're going here is to go to Cornelia and picking up the Nitro Powder. You see, earlier we had heard about some dwarves on the western edge, and if we head over there, we'll hear about one thing of interest, which is this guy, the Smithy. He's looking for the legendary metal Adamantite, which he'll be able to use to make a magical sword, as he calls it, which will be important later. But for now, the main reason we're here is at the bottom of this cave, which is a dwarf who's willing to commit an act of terrorism in order to help us save the world. He just blows up part of the continent. There was probably an easier way to get out of here, but hey, we'll do what we can. Pretty much just to the west of us is a town called Melmond, and wow, this place sucks. This is one of the only towns in the entire game that actually feels affected by what's happening to the world. Maybe the Lich is just the only one doing his job, but yeah, this place sucks. The people here are talking about a couple of things that are kind of interesting. First off is this guy called Sada, who's in the southeast, who will be useful in a little bit. Another one is someone talking about a flying ship. Now this is a classic for Final Fantasy starting from this game, but we won't get the ship for a while. There's also this weird guy called Une, who says he knows everything. Yeah, I don't know about that. Walking down south, we make our way down toward a cave where we meet a vampire. And yeah, This is kind of a recurring theme, but he's weak. Like, really weak. I killed him in 2 hits. Regardless, once he's dead, we can go into the chest behind him and pick up the Star Ruby. Now, we are going to have to come back here, but we do need to leave for now. Our first destination is to the west of the cave we were just at, with this golem with an absolute dump truck. We have to give it the Star Ruby so that way it'll get out of our way. And it was at this point in the game that I started to realize something. My thief is really bad. Remember when I said that some jobs are just better than others? Well, the thief is the worst job in the game. Now it will get upgraded to one that's pretty good, but for now he's just gonna suck. This cave then leads to Sada, who will give us the Earth Rod so that we can go back to the cave where the vampire is in to go to the first crystal. And this is Lich. Lich is the first real boss of this game, with access to spells like Earthquake and Death, as well as just hitting pretty hard generally. He can be a tough fight. You know, so long as you're like 6. Yeah, if you were expecting this guy to actually be tough, then you'd be wrong. He's not. See, something about Final Fantasy 1 is that your buffs kind of go forever. There is a cap to it all, but at these low levels, there's really not. So you can kind of just keep buffing your main attacker forever, and he becomes really, really overpowered. Knights in this game just kind of break it, unfortunately. And magic is overall pretty weak, outside of buffing your knight, of course. After a little bit of fighting, Lich goes down, and we are able to save and restore the Earth Crystal. After far too long of getting lost on the smallest world map in the game's franchise's history, I find my way over to the Crescent Lake. And this is actually where we get to re-meet Lucan. And I just got a question. Why is Lucan not the guy who gives you the canoe? Why is it just the guy to his right? It doesn't really make much sense to me. I bet there's probably a decent amount of people who played this game and just never talked to that guy. Oh wait, there are a decent amount of people this happened to, because this happened to my brother. You see, he actually owned this game when he was a kid, and yeah, he got stuck here because he didn't talk to this guy. How bullshit is that? Regardless, however, we make our way over to Mount Gulg. I think that's how you say that. And we're here to go fight Marilith. Yeah, I know. One fiend right after the other. And unfortunately, yeah, Marilith is also really easy. She's actually easier than Lich. Since she's not that much stronger than Lich and our characters have leveled up, she's really easy. And it's only going to get worse from here for the other ones. Regardless of how easy Marilith is, we're able to defeat her and restore the Fire Crystal. Now, before we go fight Kraken, I'm gonna go do a bit of a shopping and exploration spree. The first thing I get is the Rat's Tail. This is what you need to go get all the upgraded jobs. And I also go pick up the Levy Stone. Well, you have to in this case. It's what lets you get the airship so we can fly around the map. I also just want to say that the airship theme of this game, while pretty catchy, is like 8 seconds. So it will get annoying. With the airship in tow, I make my way over to Bahamut, who will upgrade your job. He's pretty easy to find, and all he wants is the rat tail, which is pretty easy to get, so there's a no-brainer to get here. Upgrading your jobs makes you significantly more powerful, and the earlier you do it, the better. Now, I actually found out in a challenge run I did of this game that you actually can't get the upgraded jobs until you beat Marilith. See, I had originally believed that since you can get all the pieces for it, that you can, but Bahamut pretty much just tells you to fuck off. We make our way over to Onrak, where, well, quite frankly, this town is on crack. First, there's this lady who asks if these legs are even real, and she's not even the only one here. And while I didn't record it for some reason, there's a fountain in this town that tells you that you're dirty and stinky and need to take a bath. Okay. The main important here is this guy who says that he's Une's brother, and that he'd be able to speak Lufinian if we had the Rosetta Stone. Interesting. You make our way into a cave to the left of here in a waterfall to go pick up the Warp Stone. This will let us get to fight Tiamat later in the game, but for now it's kind of irrelevant. Lastly, we go pick up a ferry in a desert. We'll then take this ferry over to Gaia, where it'll be released. If you then go to the lake, she'll go down to the bottom of it and get you an Oxyale. Now, I had originally remembered that this ferry dies after giving it to you, but she just sticks around. So that's cool. You go over to this lady who turns out to be a mermaid, and after seeing the Oxyale, decides that we're the ones who are going to be able to stop Kraken, restore the water crystal, and save the mermaids. So, without further ado, let's go kill Kraken. Now, making our way down here, there's actually two things that we want here more than we want to stop Kraken. The first of which is actually going up the dungeon rather than down, and that's the Rosetta Stone. You're going to need this if you ever want to beat Tiamat, so don't forget it or you'll have to come back here. The last thing that we want is an item called the Giant's Glove. The Giant's Glove lets you cast Saber, which is normally a spell exclusive to the Black Mage that can only be casted on itself and would be pretty useless otherwise outside of challenge runs. But in this case, it lets us use it on our Knight, who will become very, very overpowered with it. The last thing that we get here that isn't required is an item called the Gauntlet, or as I like to call them, the Taser Hands. You can use these to cast Thundara on all enemies without any MP cost, so it lets you go through encounters pretty easily. But the main fun here is Kraken. Now, much like the other fiends, Kraken is, well, really easy. Now, it'll get really bad later in the game for Chaos because of something I did, but in this case, I'm still just fighting the enemies as they come and getting all the chests that I find without going out of my way for anything in particular. This game is just not very hard. Maybe I should have played the NES version just to make it a bit less easy, but this game just isn't very hard. There's also better job combinations, like I said, than the ones that I'm using. Again, I'll explain a bit more on what's good later in the video. Regardless, however, it doesn't take long before Kraken goes down, and we're able to restore the light to the water crystal. We head our way back to Melmond and to learn how to speak Lufinian from Une, and I decided to ask around a little bit to see how people felt, and they seemed really happy the Lich was dead, talking about how everything's better. But the town still looks like absolute shit. Yeah, this is another really problem with the game. The characters will sometimes act different ways, but the environment will show anything. It's not a deal breaker or anything, but it is something to take note of. Our last major stop is Lufinia, and there's actually not that much to go on here. They talk about how they're the ones who make the airship, and the remake explains that someone named Sid built it in the past, and a nod to the character who appears in every other entry in the game, which is interesting to see. The Lufinians tell us a few interesting things, like how there's someone else controlling the four fiends that maybe we should pay attention to. The main important thing that we're here for is a key item called the Chime. This helps us get into Mirage Tower, so that way we can go fight Tiamat, which has taken the place over. Mirage Tower ends up being a two-part dungeon. The first part is the tower itself, and the second part is the Winged Fortress. The tower is really easy and short, and the Winged Fortress does have a few things of interest. The most interesting thing is this little cocoon ball thing. It's a view of the entire planet, and it shows a bunch of energy from the locations that the fiends were at, all converging at one location. That location being the Chaos Shrine. Once we beat Tiamat, that's absolutely where we're heading. You also go and ask around in this place, and it says that Tiamat has no known weakness, but I think his weakness is going to be swords. Just a hunch. So, Tiamat. Is he as easy as the other fiends, the Queen of Dragons? Yes. Yes, she is. And like I said earlier, the fiends don't get harder. If anything, they get weaker, because your characters are getting stronger faster than the enemies are. So, yeah, Tiamat was really easy. There's not a whole lot to really say about these fights. Buff your damage, buff your defenses if you want, heal whenever you need to, and attack her. She'll die. There's not much to it. In order to make things a little bit interesting, I decided to go and stick around here to go fight Warmech, running from every encounter so I didn't overlevel, but it didn't actually take that long to go to find Warmech. So I treated it like any other boss fight. I buffed, and I attacked it. And what happened? It died in 2 hits. I don't know what level you're supposed to be, but maybe fighting everything as they come is too much. Maybe you expected me to run more. I'm not sure. I was level 43, so if that's over leveled, then I guess maybe you don't run from everything. Otherwise, yeah, this game's just not that hard. It was at this point that I went and stopped for extra content and made myself actually overleveled and get some powerful equipment that normally you wouldn't have access to. This absolutely made the game easier for its final boss, but ultimately kind of irrelevant. like I said, this game is not that hard and Chaos is not that threatening. His big bonus I'll bring up later. Just know that for now, he's pretty easy. You shouldn't have to worry about him. Just before heading to the Chaos Shrine, we go pick up Excalibur with the Adamantite from the Flying Fortress, and we show the crystals to this black crystal in the Chaos Shrine, and it takes us to the past. Yeah, the last thing that this game really needed to make it full-fledged experience was a time travel plot. So yeah, we're time traveling to the ancient past. It's actually kind of cool. This also ends up being the first time that the random encounters can actually wear you down. And much like real D&D, the only way you can do it is by throwing 4 ancient black dragons at you. It's kind of like we're level 20 for real. As we go to progress down, and holy crap, it's Lich! Yeah, so this is something that Final Fantasy 1 does that it's actually really cool. Because we're in the ancient past, these fiends exist here in their most powerful form, so we get to rematch them. And are they hard? No, not at all. Now, I was more powerful than I should have been here, but as you'll see when Tiamat shows up, these guys are not tough. After making quick work of Marilith and Kraken, I decided it only made sense that when I fight Tiamat, I've got to do something to make it not so easy. So, after picking up the Masamune, a weapon that can be used on anyone, I decided to make Fire Blaster Sephiroth. I give it to him, and I try to just buff and buff and buff and buff and buff to see if I can't one-shot Tiamat. And it didn't work. I mean, the fight was really easy, and Fire Blaster ended up being the only one who dealt any damage, but man, I was really hoping I could just kill him in one hit. Too bad. Now at last, we make it to the top of the Chaos Shrine, and here he is, Garland. He asks if we remember him, and well, we do. There's not that many characters here. And he explains that 2,000 years from now, we're going to kill him. But we're going to fail because the fiends are going to send him back into the past. And then in turn, he will send the fiends into the future to save him, making a sort of time loop. This makes absolutely no sense and introduces a grandfather paradox that is absolutely a plot hole, but that's not really relevant to the point here. Point is, if we want to break the time loop, we're going to have to kill Chaos now in the past after he's been sent back. So that way he can't send the fiends into the future or something like that. It's not exactly clear how this breaks the cycle, just know that it does. So, Chaos. How difficult is he? Well, he's definitely harder if you don't do all the side content, and he's probably a lot more stressful on NES since if you lose, you're sent right back to Cornelia. But, I don't know, I just can't see him actually being that tough. He's kind of a joke. He's kind of got the issue that Necron has in Final Fantasy IX, where he has a lot of powerful moves, and if he does the right string of them at the right times, you can lose pretty easily. But the other alternative is he'll just start casting Dispel on you when you have very few buffs, or you have enough health to tank whatever's coming next. So he ends up just not being all that threatening. The use of elemental spells is also pretty bad in this game because of the barrier magic like Null Shock and Null Blaze. So overall, he's just not that threatening with a party of 4. After Chaos is defeated, an ending text crawl occurs, followed by the credits. Explain on that the time loop has been severed and now the world will be able to live in prosperity. our four heroes return back into their own time to live out the rest of their lives happily ever after. And that explanation is the brief version of this. This text crawl is so long. It's like they didn't want the game to actually be over, so they just kept typing and typing and typing. It's unbearable at a certain point. But honestly, it doesn't really take away from the game. Chaos is sick, and the whole game up to this point was actually really enjoyable. Final Fantasy I is a bit of a dark horse for the series. You see, most of the stuff that we know from Final Fantasy, like the heavy character-driven, story-driven plots, isn't present in this game. That wasn't established until its sequel. And also, other things like chocobos that are iconic to Final Fantasy as a whole also weren't invented until its sequel. So Final Fantasy I feels a lot more like a Dragon Quest clone than a Final Fantasy game. Final Fantasy I is an incredible experience, and if you're interested in Final Fantasy, I would recommend it. If you're just an RPG fan trying to get into Final Fantasy, I would not recommend you play this. This is a lot more for the novelty players. If you don't enjoy the game, I would honestly just recommend that you just turn it off. It's not that the game is bad, just that it's not worth it if you're not having fun. It's not going to have some crazy wow moment that's going to blow your mind like some of the other entries. There's not that much to latch onto as far as gameplay goes. Its mechanics is just not that interesting. Before I end the video, I would have to give a bit of a brief history of my experience with Final Fantasy. You see, I wasn't actually, despite my enjoyment, the one who got into Final Fantasy in my sort of group. See, that prize actually went to my brother. He had a PSP and needed some games, so my dad went and got him some from some listing that had them go to a military base or something, and they picked up Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, Final Fantasy I, and Dissidia. And that kind of just sparked me to go and find Final Fantasy IV through emulation, and it was so good that it just got me hooked. And Final Fantasy I is one of the 3 games that really did that for me, so this game does hold a bit of a special place in my heart for that reason. This is also the game that really helped me get into Dungeons & Dragons, which I still play to this day, and is one of the most fun games you could play. I would recommend you play that if you want to get the Final Fantasy experience. Overall though, Final Fantasy I, it's a good game. Is it anything special? No. Is it flawed? Absolutely. It's like a good solid 6 out of 10. It's better than the average game, but nothing that special. That being said, my next project will be Final Fantasy II, of course, so look out for that if you end up watching this video. Drop a like and subscribe. This was Bird, and I'm out.